scored real good.
You know what time it is? Raffle time. Tim O'Brien.
All right. Tim O'Brien picked these numbers, if you don't like the way he picked. Let's do Wyatt's book first. Jeanette Brown.
Wyatt Prunty's The Lover's Guide. Chapter.
Thank you so much.
Meredith Allen. Are you here? Jill McCorkle. Life After Life. Congratulations. I think we're done.
Do we want to announce that we're going to have that to make sure?
We're going to have raffle sheets out for more books tomorrow.
An open mic at 9:30 tonight. Make sure you stick around for the scholars reading this evening.
Yes.
I just stole Jill McCorkle's thunder. That's very fast. Happy birthday, Brian Brodeur and Jonathan Heinen. For all of you fiction writers who are eagerly anticipating more agent sign-up sheets, the next one goes out at breakfast in the morning at McClurg for Gail Hockman. She has asked to do hers slightly differently this year. She's going to have group lunch meetings on Saturday and Sunday. So 5 on Saturday and 5 on Sunday. Best of luck. First staff reading is tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, so please be here. Support your staff. They mentioned the Scholars Open Mic tonight. The lists are overfull and have been removed, but if you are a scholar and didn't get a chance to sign up, talk to Adam and Ranger about it and they'll see what they can do. And faculty and fellows, please don't forget that we have a 12 o'clock photo tomorrow at the French House. That's all. Now for the luminous Jill McCorkle.
Thank you. I am going to unfortunately break that chain of brand new work. So my apologies to those of you who have heard me read from this novel before or many times, but I am going to try to change it up and read some different parts I've never read before. The novel Life After Life depends on a lot of different voices, so I'll just tell you briefly how it's set up and then give you a sampling. At the hub of it all is a hospice volunteer by the name of Joanna, and her story is something like this. After many bad decisions in life and wrong turns, she's decided she's had it. She goes to a remote cabin in New Hampshire on a cold, snowy night, has it all figured out. She'll take this many pills, drink this much liquor, fall into a defunct hot tub, making it look like an accident so no one feels guilty or responsible. Goodbye. What she doesn't know is about this same time the guy who lives down the road lets his giant Newfoundland by the name of Tammy out to pee, and being the good water dog she is, she comes and plucks her from the hot tub and saves her life. What she learns soon after is that Tammy's owner is dying, and so in exchange for this saving of her life, he proposes that he help her dust herself off and find a purpose in life. So she trains as a hospice volunteer with the idea she'll stay as long as he needs her, and then she has to go back and make amends. And so I think the rest will make sense from there. So I'm going to read a brief introduction to Joanna and then give another sampling. Joanna, as ordered by Luke's many rules, keeps a notebook with an entry on each of the people she sits with. She has to do an official one to turn over to the nurse who oversees her work, but this is a different, personal notebook she writes just after someone has died. It's a notebook she bought and showed Luke to prove to him that she was taking his assignments seriously. A bright yellow, college-ruled, spiral-bound notebook, which was all she could find at the thrifty market there close to Luke's house. It was near the end for him, so she didn't venture far. "This is my page," he told her. "Everybody should get at least a page." She writes what she knows, their names and birthplaces and favorite things. Sometimes she asks questions. What is your first memory? Your favorite time of day or holiday or teacher or article of clothing? How would you describe your marriage? Was there something you learned in your life that surprised you? She records the weather and season and last words if there are any. Luke said that this would be her religion, the last words and memories of the dying, her litany. She should read and reread the entries regularly like devotionals. "Keep us close," he said. "Keep us alive. Don't ever let us disappear." The longest and most expensive journey you will ever make is the one to yourself. Joanna's life is blip, 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 like images on an old film projector that keeps sticking and burning. She's been spliced a lot of times over the years, but finally she feels free, not perfect, not problem-free, just free. No one likes to talk about the positive parts of getting older and aging into orphanhood, how with your parents you often bury a lot of things you were never able to confront or fix or let go of. She spent long hours discussing this with CJ, a girl most likely not to be Joanna's best friend, and yet she is. CJ is half her age, punk and pierced and tattooed with a baby boy whose father she won't discuss. Not yet, at least. CJ is beautiful and so unaware of it. Long legs and hazel eyes and a beautiful dark complexion that leaves people perplexed and wondering about her ethnicity. It seems she might even be perplexed herself and camouflages herself with tattoos and loose clothing and colors of hair dyes that are not natural to any race. CJ claims to have a lot of secrets, lots of ghosts, and she says she writes down all the bad stuff in her journal, which she calls Pandora's box, and hides it there in the best security safe of all. She said she made a special trip to Costco to buy her safe deposit box, a mega-sized box of Kotex, which she then positioned at the back of her linen closet with the sentry placed in front, Monistat and Vagisil and all kinds of douches. She said it was a security system easily tested in the checkout line. The man next to her going from way too warm to icy cold in minutes. She said if there were any doubt, a good scratch in the right place would really get rid of someone you weren't interested in. "If something ever happens to me," she once told Joanna, "everything you need to know is in the journal in the giant Kotex box at the back of the linen closet, and you can have everything I own, even Kurt, especially Kurt." Joanna told her that if anything ever happened to her, she had a fake book, Darwin's Descent of Man, that opens and holds important papers. She also has a fake can of Campbell's tomato soup. The bottom screws off, and someday when she makes lots of money, that's where she plans to keep some for security. "You can have that," Joanna told her. Joanna wasn't there for her mother, but she was there for her dad, and seeing him through those last days allowed her to let go herself. Being there may prove to be the greatest gift of her life, and of course none of that would have happened without Luke and Tammy. In her work, Joanna has learned the importance of of making peace. She sees it all the time, the stubborn child who won't come to the bedside, and so the parent lasts far longer than should be asked of anyone. It's painful to watch, and for this reason she feels lucky to have journeyed her way back. Make their exits as gentle and loving as possible, Luke had said. Tell them how good it will be, even if you don't believe it yourself. You're Southern, you know how to do that. And now family members greet and embrace her like she's one of them. But it's important to remain separate, to allow them to claim their grief. It's important not to get too attached or personally involved. Sometimes when family members are naming the test or symptoms, she allows herself to imagine her own mother getting the news and then driving home, actively deciding what to do next, but not calling her. But Joanna can go only so far with that, or she'll undermine her purpose in the present. She is there, compassionate and listening, guiding the patients to talk and tell their stories if inclined, but knowing when to step back into the shadows of the drapes or in a closet door so family members get their time. She knows how to disappear. Relatives show her all the old photos and letters. They tell her of accomplishments and regrets, and then afterward they drift away. Her presence like something from an old dream, a reminder of their grief and loss. Sometimes they see her in the grocery or hardware store, and they can't help themselves. Their eyes well up and words get choked. Like Pavlov's dogs, they react to her presence. It makes her think of poor Harley, the docile old orange cat at Pine Haven, with enough poundage to warm even the coldest circulation-free feet. Only now all of the residents are terrified of him because of the story in a recent news broadcast about a cat who chose to curl up beside whoever was most likely to die. The report speculated how the cat knew. Did he sense something? Did he smell some chemical release of a body shutting down? His track record was convincing enough that the people who worked in that particular place paid attention to where he spent his time, and the story told was convincing enough to ruin poor Harley's life there at Pine Haven. Once he was the most beloved and coveted creature in the place, and now he's greeted by shrieks and screams, slippers and plastic cups tossed his way. He's just a reminder of what is coming, a feline representation of Joanna herself, the one who appears bedside at the end and massages their cold, darkening feet. And I'm going to skip over to CJ, and this is where, instead of Newark, this is my most daring moment because I'm about to break the language barrier, as I warned Wyatt. I don't think I have little people in the audience. I don't, do I? So this is CJ. I won't give her full strength, but here's a taste of CJ. CJ, Carolina Jessamine. Speaking of things never to tell your kids, how about where you were fucking at the time of conception? How about that? Or how about what everything cost? It cost this to feed you and that to clothe you. I wish I could send you to summer camp, but it costs too much, and so does a bike, and so does a house that looks worth a shit. Even the best intentions, the day camp through the rec department and the jeans that are the copy of what everybody else is wearing, still leaves you feeling like an undesirable, an unwanted thing to be put in the next room while all the Mr. Wrongs come and go, like anybody even believes there's a Mr. Right. Her mom once had a date with a Mr. WRIGHT, and what a joke that was. Yeah, whatever. Fuck your brains out. She didn't say it, but that's what she was thinking. Her name is Carolina Jessamine, named for a native vine, close kin to Confederate jasmine, both hardy, thriving plants that will take over a structure in no time at all. You want to hide something ugly? Just plant jasmine and then watch the ugly thing disappear. Her name is beautiful, or so people say, but maybe they wouldn't say that or think it if they knew how she got it. One of those things she shouldn't know, but her mother was too stupid or too unaware or something to know better. Her mother was there in the Arboretum, right over there, where CJ goes out to smoke every day on a break. Her mother's buried just beyond the very spot. Talk about never going anywhere. Talk about a really small and limited life. Her mother told her that the whole time she was making love in the arboretum, she was staring up at that beautiful lush vine and the little silver tag that named it, Carolina Jessamine. Wow, thanks, Mom. If her father, unknown creature that he is, had only flipped her over and taken her from behind, CJ might be named split-beard bluestem, or hairgrass, or common phlox. Talk about too much information. And did her mother even tell her about the plants beyond that? The purpose the split-beard bluestem serves to control erosion, the silvery seed heads bursting to hold on and take root and never leave, or the brackish-loving hairgrass on underground runners popping up unexpectedly like a bad nosy neighbor. It made her think of what it must look like down below, the moles and voles tunneling along. It made her think of learning all about the Underground Railroad, people escaping, disappearing, resurfacing into a whole new place in life. It makes her inhale a long, deep breath just to even imagine it. Now the cross vine is in bloom, orange and red trumpets straining for sunlight. She takes one of those good cleansing breaths they talk about when trying to get people to do yoga, and it's peaceful. A whole room full of old folks breathing deeply and chanting, one sounding like a sewing machine and another a squirrel. 1 billion angels could come and save her soul. She loves that song and might have it tattooed around her wrist when she saves some money. Then later she could add, "Please don't leave me here," around her ankle. But her mother did leave her. She didn't care. And the longer CJ lives, the more amazed she is at how little of a shit so many people really give beyond their own little orbits. It makes her laugh to think of Stanley Stone, who just the other day suggested to Marge Walker that she give everybody a break and come stare into his navel for a while instead of her own. These old guys are crazy, but there's some good ones, better than what she had in a mother. And Joanna is a good friend for sure. There's somebody who lived to tell the tale, turned it all around. Her mother could have done that too, but of course she didn't. She didn't have the courage. It is hard to even think about her mother, to picture her. Once upon a time she was beautiful, and the pictures of her as a young girl would have surpassed anyone in this town. But it doesn't take long to age when you're poor and abuse your body. You can go from young and beautiful to looking like crap, like that dried up potato chip at the bottom of the bag. That was CJ's mom, the dried up, undesirable chip. And by killing herself, she made sure CJ wouldn't have it any better, or would have to work like hell to even get a chance. And now here she is, 26 years old, and she's done just about everything there is you can do without any college education. She's waited tables and scrubbed houses and washed the old filthy hair of the elderly. She cuts their hard nails and doesn't say a word about skin so dry and hard it could cut you, and old yellowed nails you need a chainsaw to get through. "Does that feel good, sweetie?" she will ask while rubbing lotion into their old worn-out feet. Some call them Pat and Mike, some call them the old dogs. One calls them her little sweet tootsies. Does that feel good? She has asked that question often enough, an easy thing to do, and there was a time when she did it to get what she needed and wanted. Some people might call it prostitution or whoring, but she figured it was no different from what a lot of women are doing right there in their little married houses. I really want to go on that trip, so let's screw him there tomorrow night between Lost and the evening news. That'll be good for something. She's worked as assistant to a local caterer, and so she's heard plenty. The girls in the black pants and white tops are invisible as they reach and fill the glasses, especially a girl like her whose skin color is questionable. What are you, people want to ask. Are you part Indian? Are you Hispanic? Her tattoos don't show in the long sleeves, and she wore no earrings or bracelets to those events. Her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. After a few passes of the glasses on silver trays, she was totally invisible, nothing more than a hand there to serve. "What did you have to do to get him to buy you that?" one woman asked, her voice shrill and girlish, and they all leaned in close. "He gets a blowjob on his birthday, and that's it." Giggles, acknowledgement, amen. "What about Valentine's? I do birthday and Valentine's." And what they don't know is how the men do notice when you fill the glasses. Some mumble, so you have to step close, but take note, they don't mumble with other men. They don't mumble with their wives. One followed her to the kitchen and down the basement stairs where the wine was kept. "I've never made love in a wine cellar," he slurred, and she told him that today wasn't looking so good either. And she pushed him aside and got herself back into daylight and fresh air as quickly as possible. Sometimes at cleaning jobs, she turned on the TV for company. This was before she got pregnant with Kurt, and she was all alone. She liked the Spanish channel. She doesn't know a word of Spanish other than hola, but it was easy to know what was happening. You'd be an idiot not to get it. She was taking a break and watching that Spanish soap opera, the man meeting his mistress while the wife was in a coma in the hospital, and then the real man was right there in the real house looking at her, and his wife was not in a coma at the hospital, but shopping for their upcoming tropical vacation, and she could see right through that window. She had felt him watching her before, and finally she ended up saying, "I don't do windows, but I can do you." The beginning, and actually it was a good beginning, or it seemed good, it felt good, and she even let herself imagine such a life, to imagine the safe, draping warmth of someone who cares, a suitcase packed for a tropical vacation. She worked for a living, she worked to live, and what scrutiny of her performance. Her performance was discussed openly, her name and number passed along from hand to hand, the same hands holding their glasses out for a refill from the faceless no-name with the bottle. "She's real good," they say. "Who's your girl?" they ask. "Who do you use?" The key word is use, isn't it? So often that's the key word. But once they decide a girl is good, then she's invisible and she can scrutinize them. They sit at their computers or in front of their mirrors and leave little notes before dashing off to the next stop. And then the girl is left to look and plunder their things. How open their lives are. The box of condoms that never gets touched week after week after week there in his top drawer, which is always left open for you to close. The thousands of tubes of things that promise to make her look better. The shoes heaped in the closet and invitations crowding the fridge. So many addresses she recognized where she had also knelt before the great porcelain altars and cleaned behind them. Real clean people are often overcompensating for some really bad stuff, and really dirty people just don't care. Which is worse? Flip a coin. One thing she learned is that there are a lot of men who made it a point to swing by the house while she was there. Some of them remembered her mother. Some of them complimented her. They said how she knew their houses better than their wives did. One said how she knew his body better than his wife did. She knew their secrets. It wasn't hard. On that soap opera, the mistress was scorned. That was not hard to do at all, and it was also not very smart. Now the man was scared. He was thinking, "I can't win." Ding, 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 you are absolutely correct, Bob. You can't win. He won when his wife hired her. He won the first time he ever ripped her clothes off and threw her there on the master bedroom bed. He never had it so good. She was a tool, his favorite tool, right in there with his putter and weed eater and espresso maker, the high-tech blender for the margaritas she never got offered. So sure, go ahead, bring your ass on over and screw me, because it won't mean one thing. The perfect affair is kind of like the perfect murder, unlikely. There are always telltale signs, there are always breadcrumbs, even the most minuscule, leading to the main event. Sometimes she cleaned everything up, and sometimes she didn't, or doesn't. Sometimes she doesn't. Her mother did leave a note. Please forgive me. I can't take it anymore. Sometimes she writes her mother notes and tells her things, asks her things. Didn't anyone ever try to help you? Was there anyone who really loves you? In this great big world, did anybody care? Black chicks and poor white girls go missing or get raped and murdered all the time, but let them be white and blonde and beautiful or rich and see where it goes. Once upon a time, her mother was beautiful, but that was all, and that was not enough to save her life. I'm going to shift gears here, I promise. This is Rachel Silverman, who has come to live in this retirement village only because it's the hometown of a long-ago lover nobody ever knew about. And I think the only thing you might need to know is her husband's name is Art, and there may be reference to Stanley Stone, who's already been mentioned. This is a man who's faking dementia to avoid life with his son. He never worked it out with his son, and he thought this would be an easier solution. So anyway, this is a little bit of Rachel Silverman. Rachel Silverman is in the South. God only knows what she was thinking, and yet she thought it and she chose it, and now she's here in the middle of nowhere, the land of quilts and doilies, yes ma'am and no sir. Please and damn thank you. Hot as hell and surrounded by some sweet tea-soaked idiots she'd just soon slap as listen to. Thank God they're not all that way, goobers and hee-haw and Judgment Day, but there are enough that are, so she sticks close to her neighbor Sadie Randolph and the suite across the hall and the little lesbian from South Carolina who loves tobacco products. They were both school teachers, both still capable of and interested in reading the newspaper, and they don't judge their neighbors, or if they do, it's a judgment Rachel absolutely agrees with, like the other day when Toby bit off the end of a cigar and announced she was tired of people trying to save her soul. It's insulting, she said. They don't know my soul from a cat's ass. So Rachel is here, as the big X on the map in the front hall tells her. She is here. Pine Haven Estates, retirement village and assisted living, Fulton, North Carolina, an hour from the ocean and minutes from Interstate 95, just 700 miles from where she spent her whole life in Massachusetts, which was also just an hour from the ocean and minutes from the same highway. She's here, her last adventure. She has come to see the hometown of her one great love, a man who was not her husband and who likely never would have been. She had 3 glorious months with him in the summer of 1970, which was the year she turned 39. Imagine turning 39 at a time when people still made reference to Jack Benny and found humor in a person never admitting he had turned 40. Now you'd be hard-pressed to find a young person who had even heard of Jack Benny, and now 39 sounds like someone barely living, still wet behind the ears, their muscles capable of doing all kinds of things they take for granted. They met during one wonderful summer on the Cape, both there alone, and then after that there were occasional afternoons and odd Saturday mornings, some stretches of time more generous and giving than others, until the winter of 1976 when he was out of her life forever. His name was Joe, a simple, easy name for a seemingly easy man, but he was far more complex than what appeared on the surface, and he made Rachel's life complex for a very long time, the difficulties far outnumbering the comfort, and yet still she chose to continue. Several times he even said, "So just stop, just end it," but she never did. And now life is simple. She has come seeking his South, the place of his boyhood, the setting of all those stories he told her when they burrowed into the far back booth of a Duxbury deli or some small motel down on the Cape. That life was complicated and fraught. That life left her heart pounding and her sleep fitful, so afraid she might be caught, afraid she might speak his name in the darkness of the bed where her husband of so many years lay. That life involved involved dark winter days and snow shovels and raw hands and dry skin. And it involved those secret meetings, brandy-laced and delicious, the smell of wet wool and diesel fumes when standing and waiting for the train, suddenly intoxicating, anticipation and deceit, lovemaking and lies, cases and stuffed files, and somewhere in there a uterus that needed to be pulled out and tossed away, and the years of debating about adopting or not came and went. One day an obsession and the next a distant memory. The room in that first Beacon Hill apartment that would have been a nursery, stripped and shelved. A library guests asked to see, stopping and perching on the velvet-cushioned bay, as she often did, to glimpse the Charles River and distant spires of the Longfellow Bridge while they marveled at her impressive collection of first editions. Just before Rachel migrated south, she had a taxi drive her back to that old apartment, and she stood on the icy sidewalk staring up at the library window. They had not lived there in years, and she felt a wave of time sickness to see it. Years of lost hope seeped into the cold red brick. She could almost hear their voices, her husband's, her own, the heavy black wall phone in the kitchen, the radio on top of the refrigerator always tuned to public radio, rattles in the windows and rainbows cast by the warp-bubbled glass of the panes. When she got back into the cab, she felt she was saying goodbye to something living and breathing, a life that would continue to exist, one that she could reach back and touch, if brave enough to do so. But now life is simple. Now life is about coffee in the morning, life is about meals and books and memories and the occasional silly television show she doesn't enjoy that much, and yet finds herself drawn to all the same. She does not give a damn about who can dance and who can't, and she doesn't recognize a soul they say is a celebrity, except of course Cloris Leachman, who Rachel saw in South Pacific on Broadway in 1954. Sometimes there's a good movie showing or some interesting musicians passing through. Sometimes she joins a bridge game or conversation, or has that young woman with all the tattoos and stuff give her a pedicure and foot massage. She was never a pedicure type of woman, so resisting what she felt it represented in her own young womanhood. A type of woman who was not an intellectual and not a part of the workforce. And Rachel Silverman was definitely a part of the workforce. She was quite simply a force. People in the firm called her the shark, and at that time the Jewish women she knew who were all into hair and nails were of a different ilk, to say the least. She was explaining this to the tattooed pedicurist, who sat and listened and followed every word, only to then wave a hand and say, but that was ages ago. Everybody likes a pedicure now. The girl's own nails were charcoal gray, which she says is the latest, but Rachel chose something less corpse-like, a pale pink with no frost. Oh, come on now, shark, the girl said. You can do better than that. She leaned in close to whisper, her breath like cinnamon and her body soaked in patchouli like Rachel had not encountered in years. That's what Marge Walker always gets. Come on, where's the shark? Marge is the queen of all the traits that get on Rachel's nerves, a tight-girdled, self-righteous moron. The girl persisted, and now Rachel has deep burgundy toenails the color of a nice Bordeaux. Sexy, the girl told her. You're no church lady. She swatted Rachel with the rolled-up paper as she was leaving. You're the shark. Rachel got a little way down the hall and decided to go back and tip her a 20. She is a child herself and raising a baby who is sometimes in there with her. She's probably making minimum wage with nobody there to help her. Rachel's seen her out in the Arboretum smoking, a lonely, wild-looking girl who could be beautiful by conventional standards, but chooses to use dye and studs and cologne in a way that might repel some. Rachel certainly understands the impulse that would lead a person to do such a thing. I can't take this," the girl said, and Rachel reached and balled her hand over the girl's so all those others sitting there under the dryers wouldn't make it their business to know what's going on. "You can give me a ride sometime. Take me to see some things in town." "This town?" The girl wrinkled her nose and laughed, then extended her hand, gray nails with little pink dots on them, all kinds of rings and bracelets jangling. "Sure, I'll take you. I might need some legal advice sometime, so maybe we could do some swapping. It's a deal." "Oh," the girl held on to Rachel's sleeve. "My name is CJ. She paused before continuing. "And I see you sneaking out in the cemetery a lot." "Rachel Silverman," she said in her best attorney voice, "and I've seen you out there smoking cigarettes." "Yes," the girl leaned in and put her forehead near Rachel so they were eye to eye. "So we need to be good friends. I totally respect your need to get out of here. And I can't say I respect your addiction, but I do understand it. God knows I smoked for 20 years and I loved every puff." She and Art had smoked Kents, and Joe smoked Camels, and once when Art went to her purse to look for a cigarette, he pulled out a pack of Camels and looked at her in the strangest way. Her mind slowed to mush, knowing the nylons she had not taken the time to put back on were in there too, as well as a ticket stub for the Godfather and the pack of Milk Duds Joe had greeted her with there in the darkened theater. "Oh no," she said, "I took my client's cigarettes." She reached for her purse and pulled out the Kents, took the Camels, stuffed them in, and snapped it shut. "I'll have to confess." She did not let a beat fall, but pointed out the window to the beautiful sunset and asked what he thought about eating out. She said she was starved for Italian food. "You're one good-looking feminist," Joe had said the first time he ever saw her stripped down to a nylon slip. They were out on Highway 1 near that ridiculous steakhouse he liked to go, where it was like you were in the Wild West waiting for a stagecoach, enormous fake cows littering the grounds. "You are one hot, broad, canned piece of feminist." Who would believe that? And though his words made her angry, and though she felt a wave of respect and then guilt for the smart, progressive-minded husband she was cheating on, she didn't say a word and instead gave in to the moment. Truth was, she was a little bit flattered, and when had she ever had such sex? Never in her life. And when had she ever eaten such a steak? Big bloody slab filling her plate, and she ate every bite like a starving pig. She was ravenous, and in that moment greedy. She could not get enough. The snow was falling in big wet flakes, and those fake cows stood there stupidly under the glow of neon lights. She had thought of that place not long after she moved into Pine Haven, and CJ set up a Christmas village in the entryway of the building where there was an enormous decorated tree. Rachel had always had an aversion to the gaudy blinking lights and incessant Christmas music, but she found herself drawn to that little winter street, the diner all lit and warm looking with a tiny blinking light a sign asking you to come in and eat. "Don't you just want to go in there and order something?" CJ had asked when she saw Rachel looking. "I'd get a grilled cheese like the one on the sign." At the time, Rachel was not ready to be friendly to anyone, and so she said absolutely not. She had just arrived and was thinking that this might have been the dumbest decision she has ever made in the 80 years of her life. Occasionally, she still wakes in the middle of the night, confused about where she is, and is shocked with the reality of it all. She woke not long ago and had a second or two when she was back in that first apartment, the morning light so familiar to another time, and it took a while to get her bearings. And then other times she thinks, where else would she rather be? Why wouldn't she want her final home to be here, right next door to where Joe is buried? She goes 2 times a day, once in the morning and again late in the afternoon. And so she is here, as the sign up front tells her, here at Pine Haven, home of lard, Jesus, sugared up tea, and enough Michiganders to fill Fenway Park. She is here in the land of Joe, and now she pulls her door to and makes her way down the hall. She'll slip out the side door and cross the parking lot to go to the cemetery. She hears the music long before she gets to his room. Herb Alpert and Tijuana Brass. I forgot to say, part of Stanley Stone's shtick is he plays that Herb Alpert album over and over and over, so people will leave him alone. He plays it nonstop, and it puts her in a time warp each and every time. The door is half open, and she can see him sitting in his chair and staring out the window. It's unusual to see him so quiet, looking so handsome and pensive and normal, in a way you don't notice when he's flexing his arms and talking about wrestling or acting hateful and rude. She walks fast so he won't see her and call out something obscene. A taste of honey, whipped cream, tangerine, lady fingers. Is this an album or a menu? Art had asked. It was 1965, and they played that album to death. She pushes open the door and steps into the sunlight. There's a hearse parked and hidden in the shade of the tall wax myrtle hedge. It seems there almost always is, someone leaving. It's the kind of thing Rachel never mentions to anyone else. Why mention that elephant in the room? A gangly boy with long auburn hair is on a skateboard, and the little girl from next door is watching him. The children don't see her, and she walks quickly. She feels beckoned by the shade and damp, moist undergrowth as she makes her way through the arboretum, the trumpet and crossvines in full bloom, jasmine, wisteria. It was 1965, and she and Art had attended Norman Thomas's big birthday celebration the year before. They had sent him money for his presidential campaign. Art shook his hand. They applauded his stance on birth control, ironically, since nature had taken care of that for her. They admired the way he stood against segregation long before it was even in the news. They protested Vietnam. It was 1965, and she wore short dresses and leather boots, and she had a shoulder-length fall that she clipped onto her own hair and then tied a long scarf up at her hairline. She was never into high fashion, but she did latch on to what suited her, and then wore it in a way that made it all her own. Like the way she now likes to roll up her slacks in neat pedal pusher cuffs. She did it so she wouldn't pick up twigs and burrs in the cemetery, but then she got so many compliments from people like that young pedicure girl CJ that she kept doing it, and now others are copying her. Even Marge has rolled her pants up a couple of times, which says there may be hope for everyone. Green peppers, butterball, lollipops, and roses. It was 1965, and she had never even heard of Joe Carlisle. It was 1965, and life seemed easier. Her parents were alive, and so was her brother. Her bones were hard and strong, and her vision perfect. She was a young married woman with a professional career, and she thought that one day she would have it all, a career and a baby and a house on the Cape. It was 1965, and she was filled with hope. Lush pots of ivy spilling from her window boxes as she leaned out late in the day to see the sunset, to smell the river, to watch her husband turn the corner as he headed home. She was so alive. And now I'm going to end with a sampling of what I described of Joanna's notebook. Notes about Willis Morgan Hall, born March 13, 1921, died March 14, 2007, Holderness, New Hampshire. Willis Hall died of throat cancer in the old farmhouse where he had spent his whole life, where every room smelled of the sweet cherry pipe tobacco he smoked for years, along with cigars and 10 years prior cigarettes. He was known in his handsome early years as the boy who would imitate the Philip Morris ad, had, or say, "Hey, good looking, got a cigarette?" and had met 2 of his 3 wives with that line. All 3 of his ex-wives were with him at the end. He joked that he and the king Yul Brynner played had a lot in common. They both should have quit smoking sooner, and they both had lots of wives gathered there at the end. The only time he was ever away from home was when he was in the service. He was at the Battle of the Bulge, which he liked to say was indeed just as bad as it sounded. Bulge is not a nice word, he said, used most often for what is unattractive, eyes and stomachs, or what is pornographic, you know? Every year, some school children would pop up with questions for a history project, and he gave them just enough for a story, just what they needed. The cold and the filthy conditions, the way that battle hit them worse, just when they thought they were almost out of the woods. The ground was still covered in snow, though the days were just enough longer that it felt like spring was coming. One wife noted that he always said he loved this time of year when everything was thawing and muddy, the plants starting to stir and break the soil. He said he felt so sexy in the spring. "He told you that too?" another wife asked, the youngest of the 3, though they all looked about the same age and could have been sisters, and they all laughed. "How can you not love him?" the other wife said. "Who wouldn't fall for him? Sweet as sugar, aren't you?" "Easy to fall, but hard to keep him," another said. They all were remarried, and though he had girlfriends, 2 who had brought casseroles, only the wives were present that day at dusk. It was his favorite time of day, they said. He liked dusk, and he liked well-made shoes, and he loved Angie Dickinson, especially as Pepper, the policewoman. He liked Martini and Rossi, which Angie advertised, and of course she was the reason he also started eating avocados, which were often not easy to find there in New Hampshire when he first got a taste for them. All 3 wives said at different private times how they had wanted life with him to work, but that he was stuck there, not even willing to take a vacation, not willing for his wife to work and be gone all day. In the summer he might venture out a little bit, eat out locally, go to the occasional movie, but once the snow fell, that was it. He stayed put. And, the 3rd of the 3 had said, sadly shaking her head, "There is a lot of snow in New Hampshire in the winter." The only photograph in the room is one of himself as a child, his mother and father on either side lifting him by the arms up and over a mound of snow as tall as he was. When asked about his parents, he said they were wonderful to him. His mother once told him that everyone loved him so much, all the girls in town loved him. How would he ever choose a wife? "It was hard," he said and laughed. "I would love for my mother to know how wonderfully difficult that choice proved to be." When asked to tell about the charm he seemed to have over everyone, how he had managed to have 3 ex-wives who love him dearly, he said his favorite power tool had always been silence. "I'm their mirror," he said, "and they always come back for one more look." Toward the end, when in and out of a deep drug sleep, he gripped my hand with a strength that surprised me and said, "Stay." I will think of him every time I smell tobacco or peel an avocado or hear mention of Angie Dickinson or the word bulge. I will continue to marvel at his ability to reflect back to people what they need to see and how it seemed he needed nothing. I asked permission to take one of his many empty tobacco tins, thinking I would keep things in it, earrings, loose change, but the smell is still so powerful I keep it capped like a genie for a time I might need to conjure the memory of Willis Hall, a good-humored, selfless spirit I didn't really know at all beyond what he reflected back on whoever was talking to him at the time. Joanna's notebook. And then we get this brief section. Willis Hall. Smoke and snow and snow and snow. Sometimes a cigarette can keep you warm, that tiny bit of light, red glow, smoke breath warm within, or you can pretend it does. The Ardennes are not unlike the White Mountains or the Green Mountains, or you can pretend that. Snow, rock, trees, but so far from home. And cold. Cold hands, warm heart, his mother said. And she said, 1, 2, 3, jump. And he was up and over a a mound of snow, a mound, a bulge, a hill of heavy falling snow, and a forest so dense, too dense to see, and snowing, breath smoking. The young man beside him can't go anymore. Stay, he says, his wounded feet torn and raw, so he sinks down into a burrow of roots and waits and waits and smokes when it's safe to smoke, breathes in and breathes out, and now he's cold, ice cold to the touch. Breathe in and breathe out, and sometimes don't breathe at all. Stay and hold his hand, wrap his feet, this identical boy in age and uniform. The safest choice is not to move, but to breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out, and sometimes don't breathe at all. Sweet as sugar, his mother says, cold hands, warm heart. Cold hands, warm heart. And I'm going to be like other people. I'm not going to leave you there. With apologies to people who have heard me do what I'm about to do too many times. I've got time. I'm about to do a rant to see if I can bring it back to a jollier place. One of the people living here is a woman, Toby, a retired school teacher who got dismissed from her job, which you'll understand about, and she's on a rant, and I'll just give you a taste of her voice, and this really is the end. I was a good teacher for 40 years, and then things started getting strange. Next thing I knew, the children were coming in with names like Bandana and Eurasia and Montpelier. And I said, those are things and places, children, and you are people. What on earth is going on? And there were names I couldn't even pronounce, and I can guarantee you that you don't readily go calling names you can't say. I'm looking for the Johns and Bills and Toms, and they just weren't there anymore. I'm a human, a woman. I was an English teacher and a bit of an amateur writer myself, but I'll tell you, things went so far off course, I just didn't even know where I was anymore. I think it was the beginning of the end, too. What once was generous compassion for high school students with all their angst and crap going on turned into pure tea, agitation, and fury. I didn't get frustrated by who I am. I got frustrated by what they were reading and wanting to write about. I said, you're too smart for all this mess. Dwarves and wizards and gnomes and vampires, big blue aliens with tails like monkeys. I said, what I wouldn't give for a good old-fashioned story about somebody losing his or her virginity or getting an abortion. Grandma died, and for the first time I knew I was mortal. Or what about the one where the boy doesn't want to kill a deer, but Granddaddy makes him so he can be a man? I was wanting to write something myself, and it was dying to get out of my head, but couldn't find the door. It was also plugged up with all that malarkey. I had worked so hard, and all I was longing for was some whining little boy who didn't want to kill a deer. I was craving one, in fact, would have loved him and given him an instant A. And where did all the orphans go? Jane and Oliver and Pip? It's an honorable and very dramatic position. And the girl who's upset to have a period, where did she go? Or the one all torn up about losing her virginity, where did she go? If they're still out there, they're keeping a low profile and hiding from all those getting boobs for Christmas and graduation and making themselves up to look 30. I wanted dead deers and dead grandparents. I wanted anything other than a zombie or a shape-shifting demon wolf coyote. What am I to do with a bunch of aliens at Armageddon? Some of them said about their papers, I meant to be vague, like that might excuse something that didn't make a damn bit of sense. Or the one who said I just didn't get what he was doing because it's so brilliant. I took my work seriously, and where did it get me? There I was asking for a little reality, and who wouldn't be after Columbine? What teacher on the planet after Virginia Tech didn't study her classroom windows and doors and the desk arrangements and hatch some plan for how she would protect all those young bodies, even the ones that got on her last goddamn nerve? And then this one boy, meaning to push my button, this one boy named something like Montreal Fedora, offered up some literary criticism on the death of Julius Caesar. He said, and I quote, them dudes was mean as shit, weren't they? And I said those dudes were mean as shit. That is what I got in trouble for. Some kid in there ran home and tattled, not about what was being discussed in class, but what the teacher said. Miss Tyler, come to the office, please. Miss Tyler, please come to the office. This had happened many times. I made a notch on my desk, in fact, every time it happened, and one whole side looked like a fine-tooth comb. My principal was about 14 and had never read Shakespeare. How do I know? I asked him one day. And in that moment when I needed him on my side, I almost wished that I had not done that, or that I had been a teacher who did not argue against prayer in my class, which I had done for years, or did not allow hats, but what did I care if they wore hats? Some of them might have been sporting bad haircuts they were ashamed of, or keeping their lice locked in. What did I care? I didn't tell on kids who refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance either, because I figured we'd have plenty of battles to fight, and I needed to choose the most important. I mean, these are humans growing up and witnessing the uterus as a competitive sporting arena, and who would have ever thought that? Irresponsible birth control will get you a television show and a magazine cover. I said to my principal, the boy king, I asked him, if I retire like you say I have to, who will teach these children? Who will guard the gate? Who can promise me they'll tell the boys to keep their trousers zipped and tell the girls not to go promising things they do not intend to deliver? Who will teach birth control? Who will teach the value of literature? I said, who will tell them nobody gives a damn about how dwarves and trolls have sex? If they had, the Brothers Grimm would have figured it out and already done it. They had every opportunity. What I wouldn't have given for just one stained soul. One good story about one stained soul.